Chapter 18 practice work. Looks like we're going to start this out with the high-low method. Let's just go ahead and get into this. So Alden Company's monthly sales cost data for its operating activities of the past year follow. Management wants to use these data to predict future and variable fixed costs. You see we have all 12 months here. There's the month, there's 1 through 6 sales and total cost. For those, I wish they just put a line here, right? It would have made it a little simpler. And then months 7 through 12 have sales and total cost. Remember that with the high-low method, we're looking at the months that have the highest activity and the month that has the lowest activity, and then we're going to take cost at those 2 points. When we looked at the lecture, we were talking about the months, and it gave us the number of units that was sold in the high month and low, or in every month, and we determined which was going to be the high and low. And people get confused when they see this. But what I would tell you is that whether it's sales dollars or sales units, it's the big number and the low number that we want to look for in this column and compare it to the total cost in this column. So just scan through here. What month do you think is going to be our high? Okay, yep, 340,000. And then which month is going to be our low? You probably guessed it too. It's going to be the 80,000, number 9, right there. Okay, so we're looking at, we have a high month at 7, a low month at 9. There's our cost at high and our cost at low. And then what they're asking us to do is they want us to get into calculating the variable cost per sales dollar. We got to figure this whole thing out. Well, what they're looking for here, and if you ever pull these up on homework and you just start staring at it and go, I don't have a clue what they want, that's why I give you the drop downs, right? So that you can kind of see that they're looking for something. If you go back and then say, oh, well, wait a minute, look at the formula. What were they looking for here? They want you to have the formula, change in cost divided by the change in volume, right? Well, what is the change in cost? What are they talking about? That's our cost at the high point minus our cost at the low point, and our change in volume is going to be our volume at high, right? Volume at high minus volume at low. Okay, well, don't we know what this is? Our cost at the high point minus our cost at the low point. What are they talking about? They're talking about 220,000 minus 64,000. You see that? Cost at high minus cost at low. 220 minus 64,000 is going to be 156,000. And then we take the volume at the high minus the volume at the low. Well, that's 340 minus 80, right? Does everybody see that? Volume at high minus volume at low, 340 minus 80, and that's going to give us 260,000. It should do the math for us, hopefully. Yep. It said that our variable cost per sales dollar is going to be 60 cents. Okay, I like it. I think that looks pretty good. And it says, okay, well, let's figure out if we can determine what fixed costs are. Oh my goodness, how do we do that? Well, don't we know total cost at the high and total cost at the low, and for that matter, total cost anywhere else? And how do you get total cost? Well, you add variable cost and fixed cost together. So if I know total cost and I can figure out variable cost, then I have to be able to back into my fixed cost. Let's see if we can work it out. It says, what's your total cost at the high point? Oh, we're going to do this again. Our total cost, if you look up there at month 7, was 220,000, right? And then it says, what was your volume at the high point? It was 340,000. That's how many units, right? I mean, just pretend it was $1 a unit, right? It's kind of the same thing. So if we had total cost of 220,000, at the high point we sold 340,000 and variable cost was 60 cents, then our total variable cost at the high point has to be the multiplication of these two numbers. Has to be the multiplication of those two numbers. 340,000 times 60,000 is 204,000. Okay? 204,000. Well, if 220,000 is our total cost, 204,000 is our variable cost, then what should our fixed cost be? It should be the difference between these two, right? Because variable plus fixed equals total. So 220,000 minus 204,000 is 16,000. Okay? So we just figured out what fixed cost was. We didn't even have a whole lot of data, but high-low method's nice. We're going to prove it now at the low point. What was our total cost at the low point? If you remember, it was $64,000 total cost when we had 80,000 unit sales. Okay, so that's still 60 cents, right? If you take the 64,000 divided by 80,000, it still gives you 60 cents. And it's really going to be a bummer here. It's still going to be 60 cents if you take 64,000 minus 48,000, which is now variable cost at this level. Fixed cost is 16,000. It's exactly the same. Point well proven. Okay. Make sure you hit check my work and see that everything is there. I'm sure that it is. So now it comes down and says, you know what? Now that we're smart enough to know all this, let's predict future total cost when sales volume is 200,000 and 300,000. Can we do that? Absolutely we can do that, because now that we know how to figure out contribution margin, we know what variable costs are, we know what fixed costs are, which we didn't know when we started this, by the way. We had no clue what it was when we started all this. But now that we know that, now that we figured that stuff out, we can do all kinds of stuff. We can figure out all kinds of scenarios. So what they're asking us for here is the formula for contribution margin. Probably your first test right now. What is it? Remember, in the lecture, I said that this is something you need to know. You absolutely need to know how to calculate contribution margin and how to calculate net income on a contribution margin basis. So if you didn't write it down, you don't remember, one more time I'm going to say, it probably won't be the last, that you need to remember this formula. It's going to be sales minus variable cost gives us contribution margin, and then contribution margin minus our fixed cost is going to give us pre-tax income. Okay? All right, that's it. So they're saying, all right, well, what is it at the 100% level? Well, we know that up here. What was variable cost? It was 60 cents, right? 60 cents, that's the percentage, right? Because it's 60 cents on the dollar, so that's going to be 60%. Well, if variable cost is 60%, sales is 100%, what's contribution margin? Hopefully you're pretty good at math, but if not, it's 40%, okay? Contribution margin must be 40%, right? Because these things have to work out. All right, so if our variable cost is 60%, then what is total variable cost when sales is 200,000? Well, I think it's 60% of 200,000. That's going to be 120,000. And if that's 120,000, contribution margin must be 80. At 300,000, what's variable cost? It's 60% of 300,000. Therefore, 180,000. And if that's 180,000, contribution margin must be 120,000. Okay, we get that. That's awesome. But what's fixed cost? Well, we figured it out up here. It's always 16,000, at least as long as we're within the relevant range. 16,000 there, 16,000 there. We found pre-tax income, right? 64, if we're going to do 200,000 sales, we're going to make 64 grand. If we're going to do 300,000 sales, we're going to make 104 grand. Good, right? This is just saying what's total cost. Just a reminder, right? We're just trying to hammer it home. What's total cost? Do you remember it? Hopefully you said it's variable cost plus fixed cost. So 136,000 here, because it's the 120 plus the 16, and then 196,000 here. Okay? There you go. Make sure you hit check my work. Make sure you don't have any blanks. It says that the answer is complete and correct. All right, moving on to the next one. We're going to go on over to number 3 and number 4. It might take a little time to load up because my internet at home is really slow. Come on. It's thinking about it. I'm going to pause this while it does it. Okay, so questions 3 and 4. Totally different question. Let's see what's happening here. Praveen Company manufactures and markets a number of rope products. Management is considering the future of product XT, special rope for hang gliding, okay, that has not been as profitable as planned. That's why they want to take a look at it, right? Since product XT is manufactured and marketed independently of the other products, its total cost can be precisely measured. Next year's plans call for a $200 selling price per 100 yards of XT rope. Fixed cost for the year expected to be $270,000, up to a maximum capacity of 700,000 yards of rope. This is the relevant range. Forecasted variable costs are $140 per 100 yards of XT rope. It says estimate product XT's break-even point in terms of sales units and sales dollars. What are they asking for here? It says contribution margin. Do you remember the formula? Hopefully you do at this point. Sales less what? Variable cost. Okay? So let's see, can we figure that out? Do we know what the sales per 100 yards is? Yep, there it is, 200, right? So 200. And what's variable cost per unit? Did they tell us that? There it is right there. Forecasted variable costs are 140 per 100 yards of rope. So 140, and that gives us contribution margin of 60. So now it says, okay, well, what's the contribution margin ratio? If you don't remember, we take the contribution margin per unit, right? We know what that is, that's 60, and we divide it by the sales per unit. And we know that that's 200. It's right there in the chart above it. So the contribution margin divided by sales gives us our contribution margin ratio. So now it says they want us to estimate product XT's break-even point in terms of sales units. And then you'll see down here that they want us to do it in sales dollars. It's really the same formula with one small difference. When we want to do sales units, we're going to take fixed cost and we're going to divide it by the contribution margin per unit. When we want to do it in terms of sales dollars, we take fixed cost and we divide it by the contribution margin ratio. Okay, so what's fixed cost? Do we know that? Yep, they gave it to us, right? Fixed cost up here says $270,000 is our fixed cost. So 270 divided by our contribution margin per unit, that's the 60 bucks, tells us that we have to sell 4,500 units. Fixed cost, if we're doing this one, is still 270,000. That doesn't change. And our ratio we just calculated was 30%. And that tells us that we need to sell 4,500 units or $900,000. Does that math work? If I take 4,500 times $200 a unit, yep, I get $900,000. And I'd be willing to bet you that if you take 900,000 and then you subtract 4,500 times 140, right, you're going to get 270,000 as your contribution margin, and then once you take this away, you're going to have net income of 0. So you check that on your own if you like. Otherwise, hit check my work. Make sure that it's looking pretty good. And then it says to prepare a contribution margin income statement showing sales variable cost and fixed cost for product XT at the break-even point. So this is where we're going to prove it, right? Do you remember how to do contribution margin? I sure do hope so. So it's going to be sales less the variable cost, less what after the contribution margin? Hopefully the only other cost we got, which is fixed, and that's going to equal net income. Okay, how many units do we have to sell to break even? 4,500, right? If you look up top, it was $200 per unit for sales. It was $140 per unit for variable cost, which leaves us $60 per unit for contribution margin. And fixed costs were $270,000. And look at what happens. So it proves that the formulas work no matter what, because there's the number of units that we projected, there's the amount of dollars that we projected for sales at break even, and then once we take the cost, the variable cost and the fixed costs away, we're left with a net income of 0. Again, make sure you hit check my work on all of it, and if all is good, go ahead and hit submit to get yourself a grade.